Next up, we have QxBranch. I'd like to call up Paul Guthrie, who's Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of QxBranch. QxBranch is an advanced data analytics and quantum computing firm based in Washington, with offices in London, Adelaide, and Hong Kong. They are a leader in deploying machine learning applications and assured software solutions with clients in insurance, asset management, biotech, aerospace, and government. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and thanks Colin. That was a great talk. Appreciated it. So QBranch, before we got formed, we actually started working in quantum computing around 2012. And that was through a relationship that we had with Lockheed Martin. And Lockheed Martin had approached some of my, used to be a client of mine in Australia, and said, the work that you do in Monte Carlo analytics, it seems very well aligned with this machine that we're playing around with, that we're getting really good results with. Would you like to play around and see what you can do with it? And we said, of course we would. That sounds terrific. And after doing some internal R&D and thinking about some different projects that we wanted to put into the marketplace, we decided to form QBranch. And quantum was one of the two main things that we wanted to do with QBranch. The other I'll mention but won't talk about all that much, which is related to cyber insurance. We thought that quantum computing was pretty well aligned with the capabilities that we had in the founding team, which fall into two classes. One, we had a team in Australia with exceptional capabilities in software development and in data analytics, and especially in early stage complex systems engineering. So they've bitten off very big, very tech-heavy projects like designing submarines and that kind of thing, very rigorous activities. And then the company that I come from in Washington, D.C., we had a long history of working with NASA and working with the U.S. military to infuse new capabilities into large organizations, to make sure that we're preventing technology surprise, to make sure that our investments today are mapped on a trajectory that's going to continue to follow over the next 10 or 20 years. So we thought that the ability to forecast technologies and to look into the future, as well as capabilities in this particular technology, would be well suited. And in particular, our experience in NASA, when we saw DWave, I have so much respect for what they've done, not only the extraordinary technical accomplishments, but also you guys were really on the front lines of a lot of criticism for many years, and it was almost entirely unfair. And the thing that was unfair about it is that people were looking at what DWave had done in the wrong way. They were looking at it exclusively as a technical accomplishment. And it's not just that, it's also the birth of an industry. To tell a quick story, we did a study for IARPA, the same firm, the same government organization that's funding some quantum development now. We did a study for IARPA a couple of years ago, and we took about 3,000 technology forecasts from the mid-'80s through to about 2000. And we figured out, we benchmarked them. So we figured out what was accurate, what was inaccurate, and then we did some regression analysis to figure out what is actually the best way of technology forecasting. And it turns out that the worst way of forecasting technologies is asking experts what they think is going to happen. And the intuition behind that is that if you're a technical expert and you're looking at the problems, you're going to imagine those problems being solved at the same pace as they have been in the past. And it's also, your view of things is so concrete and so in the weeds about the technical problem that it can be hard to imagine that getting solved. What we saw with DWave was, yes, there are problems, yes, they're going to get solved, DWave will solve many of them, but more importantly, there's an entire ecosystem that's going to grow around this thing. There's media that's going to be attracted to it, there's investors that's going to be attracted to it. With that comes the articulation of what are the markets that this technology is addressing. Those markets are going to be identified as enormous, and that's going to stimulate a feedback loop that's going to accelerate this industry very quickly. So we wanted to get involved in that right away, and we thought that we had the technical capability to start playing around with the technology and also the strategic awareness of some of the possible futures of how this would roll into the market. So we made 3 decisions, of the strategic decisions that we made as a company when we got started. I'll mention 3. One was that we wanted to be hardware agnostic. So we'll look at DWave and we'll understand DWave as a technology leader, but we also wanted to understand what are all the different technology trajectories that could happen, and we wanted to invest in having capability in those. We wanted to deliver real results to real customers and develop our company with the discipline of being a company that's used to dealing with clients, that's used to executing at a very high level, that's kind of battle hardened so that when quantum does really roll around, we're grizzled veterans. And 3, we thought that doing custom work was very important because what we've seen over and over again, especially with very high value technologies, is that the industry can be very, very open for a while, everyone's sharing information, and then there's a period where it goes silent. And that's normally the period where people have put the last piece into place. They're deploying a capability in the market and they're generally keeping it secret. And so as observers of the quantum industry, what you're going to see, and it's hard to know exactly where we are right now, but what you'll see is you'll see a lot of information feeding into the market. You'll say quantum is coming, and then you'll hear almost nothing. And the first thing that you'll see in the media will be, this firm has been using quantum computing for 2 years, and here are all the results, and here's what they're doing. So we wanted to position to do custom work so that we weren't just putting a product out, because the products that you'll be able to buy, those will be a slightly degraded version of someone else's extraordinary market play. So we wanted to do both of those. Right now, what our company looks like is we do advanced data analytics, often in complex systems. I mentioned the insurance work that's focused on cyber. A lot of our data analytics work is focused on high-velocity data, and that can include work with hedge funds looking at market data. It can include analyzing things like Twitter feeds to understand social media data, whether you're going to feed that into markets or whatever else. And we've even done some things with sport data. So a quick story about the type of work that we do in the quantum world. We were working with an investment bank a couple of years ago, and with this background in data analytics, they were very interested in quantum. They wanted to know how it was going to affect their business in the long run. So we did a combination of consulting as well as technical analysis to look at their major high-risk and complex areas, technical areas, and understand where quantum was going to fit in and try to understand the timeline of how that's going to happen. So here's what you do in 3 years, here's what you do in 5 years, and here's the relative complexity of all those things. The results of that was inaction on their part about investing in any particular technology, but to adopt a position where they were going to remain aware and pay very close attention to the industry as it unfolds. And as part of their staying awareness capability, we did a little project for fun. We designed a coding competition. It was very well subscribed. We got 50 people in a room. We had a couple different quantum algorithms that different teams competed against. And at the end of that, one of the teams came to the head of the project the day after. It was actually 4 different people from different teams, and said that 4th problem is the solution to a problem we've been trying to solve for 15 years. And it's an optimization problem related to foreign exchange transactions. So they told me that. I said, that's great. We applied to Innovate UK to study this a little bit more. And a plug for Innovate UK, we would not be doing this work otherwise. It would be sitting on a shelf saying, someday, maybe let's look at that optimization problem. But the Innovate UK funds allowed us to bridge that gap and start working on this right away. So we're developing algorithms to prove out the proof of concept, and what we're using to do that are some simulators of quantum capabilities that can potentially be run even before the quantum hardware necessary to run it is available. So that's the story about QxBranch, and I look forward to your questions later.